After 1,316 days, after all the highs and lows of the Bloodline saga, after some of the most flagrant abuses of annual leave in wrestling history, it was finally over. At WrestleMania 40, Roman Reigns' gigantic undisputed WWE Universal Championship reign came to an end. With everyone looking back over the past 3 years and trying to make sense of it all, we thought now would be a good time to check out all the times the Tribal Chief put his title on the line. For this list, we are including every televised World Championship defense made by Roman Reigns, not just during his time as Undisputed Champion, but from his other WWE and Universal title reigns too. Get ready to acknowledge these matches, because I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is every Roman Reigns world title defense ranked from worst to best. Join us. Number 42, WWE Championship vs. Sheamus at Survivor Series 2015. The very first title defense we are talking about today is actually the very first one Roman ever made. Isn't symmetry a wonderful thing? Reigns won his first ever world title at the 2015 Survivor Series when he beat Dean Ambrose in the finals of a tournament for the recently vacated WWE Championship. There was confetti, there were balloons, there was ice cream, but then some big Irish fella had to come along and ruin the fun. Almost immediately following the big dog's victory, Sheamus cashed in his Money in the Bank contract and pinned the new champ for the gold. This first reign lasted a measly 5 minutes and 15 seconds, as immortalized in one of the Celtic Warriors shirts. Seriously, did anyone actually buy that thing? This wasn't much of a match, more of a ploy to get Reigns more sympathy, which was not gonna work in 2015. Fans actually cheered Sheamus for beating the man they detested at the time, and that image of Roman crying whilst lying amongst the confetti was greeted with laughter rather than pity. For all those reasons and more, this defense finds itself firmly at the bottom of the list. Number 41, Universal Championship vs. Sami Zayn on SmackDown. The second time Roman Reigns defended a world title against Sami Zayn was something special. The first time it happened, not so much. On the November 26, 2021 edition of SmackDown, Zayn won a battle royal to be crowned the new #1 contender to the Tribal Chief's prize. The next week, the red-headed superstar was getting ready for the biggest match of his life when he got an unexpected visitor. Brock Lesnar, who was in the midst of his forever feud with Reigns at the time, attacked Zayn before the match, laying him out at a crumpled heap that must have given the Canadian flashbacks to getting strung up by the ankles at Money in the Bank 2 years earlier. Because WWE's workplace practices are shockingly poor, the title match was allowed to happen, and Reigns picked up the carcass left by the Beast, beating Sami in just 15 seconds. This is by far and away the shortest and easiest title defense Reigns has ever made, so you can see why it landed so far down the list. Don't fret, Sami fans, we'll get to the good title defense in due time. Number 40, Universal Championship vs. Daniel Bryan at Elimination Chamber 2021. Daniel Bryan would also have many memorable and thrilling title matches with Reigns later down the line. Unfortunately for him, we have to start with Elimination Chamber 2021. The show opened with one of its titular matches to determine the #1 contender for the Universal Championship, which Bryan won after being one of the first 2 entrants. The American Dragon had done it and banked himself a championship opportunity further down the line. Sadly, it wasn't as far as he would have liked. See, Reigns and his wise man Paul Heyman had done some political wiggling and made it so the Chamber winner would have to face the champion immediately after their match. So, out came the head of the table to face a man who had just spent half an hour fighting for his life inside a giant metal box of doom. You can see where this is going. Not even Bryan was good enough to defeat Reigns after all that struggle, and the champ retained after a minute and a half's worth of action. It wasn't a particularly exciting match, and this whole drawn-out segment was rendered a little bit pointless by the result. Next, number 39, Universal Championship vs. Goldberg at Elimination Chamber 2022. When Goldberg beat The Fiend at Super Showdown 2020 for the Universal Championship, it was to set up a big-time clash between him and Roman Reigns for WrestleMania 36. Then the you-know-what vibe coronavirus happened and everything went completely down the toilet. But hey, why let a good plan go to waste, eh? And 2 years later, WWE finally got their wish. At Elimination Chamber 2022, the final pay-per-view before WrestleMania 38, Reigns and Goldberg had their Universal title match, only this time the roles were reversed. Reigns was now the champion and Goldberg was going in as the beloved underdog challenger. Alright, beloved might be a stretch, but I'm trying to create drama here, folks. Fan reaction to the planned 2020 match between these two had been tepid to say the very least, and 2 more years had not made them any more enthusiastic. It didn't help that the match itself was really boring. Goldberg's hit big move shtick had worn incredibly thin by this point, and Reigns made little effort to bring his A-game in Saudi Arabia. The champion retained after about 6 minutes of bland, uninspired wrestling, and Big Bad Bill hasn't wrestled a match since. Number 38, Universal Championship versus Braun Strowman at Hell in a Cell 2018. After a still babyface Reigns finally beat Brock Lesnar to win the Universal Championship at SummerSlam 2018, he immediately transitioned into a feud with Mr. Money in the Bank, Braun Strowman. Oh, sorry, that should be Mr. Monster in the Bank. Gotta stay true to the branding. After weeks of fighting between the two men in their respective factions, remember when Strowman was running with Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre? That was fun. A match between them was made for Hell in a Cell, and it would be inside Hell in a Cell. Obviously, this was Strowman's official cash-in match, because I guess he was too noble to sneak up on Reigns or some nonsense like that, and Mick Foley was awkwardly shoved in as special guest referee to mark 20 years since The Undertaker gave him a free flying lesson. The match itself was fine, but it was the ending that sealed its fate. Out came Lesnar to get his revenge, laying everyone out with F5s to end the match in a no contest. Hell in a Cell match ended in a no contest, right? This decision was roundly derided by everyone, and with very good reason. Number 37, Universal Championship versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 38. 1 month after besting Goldberg in the desert, Reigns would take his Universal Championship into the biggest and most stupendous WrestleMania match of all time. Again, branding. This ludicrous slogan was for the main event of Mania's second night, a winner-take-all match between Universal Champion Reigns and WWE Champion Brock Lesnar. Don't ask me to recount how they got to this match, because you need several degrees and the patience of a saint to explain it. The Beast and the Chief had what felt like their 50th match in about 4 months at Mania, and it was, as feared, not particularly good. There was nothing new that these two could bring to the table, not even the added wrinkle of Paul Heyman and his history with both men could make people care. In the match itself, both fighters just spammed their finishes in a format that had long since grown stale, especially as we had seen it several times already from these two men. Eventually, Reigns got the win to start his run as undisputed WWE Universal Champion. A run that would go on and on and on and on. Number 36, Universal Championship versus Finn Balor at Extreme Rules 2021. Extreme Rules 2021 was a show that infamously only featured 1 match with any sort of hardcore stipulation. I mean, really, guys? After I spent the last 2 entries banging on about branding? Honestly. The match in question was the main event, a Universal title bout pitting Roman Reigns against Finn Balor, who brought out his demon persona for the first time in a while. Reigns and Balor had good chemistry together, the novelty of seeing the demon after so long was fun, and it was good to see some actual weapons being used on a show called Extreme Rules. But then, the finish happened, and nobody could have predicted where this was going to go. With both men down on the outside, Balor's heartbeat music started to play, causing the former Bullet Club leader to flop around on the floor like a distressed salmon. But then he fired up whilst his music was still playing, and then he went for the coup de grace, only for the top rope to snap, sending him crashing to the floor. Reigns crawled over into the cover, winning the match via an act of God, presumably getting revenge for Backlash 2006? Words fail me. They really do. Number 34, Undisputed Championship versus Jey Uso at SummerSlam 2023. At Money in the Bank 2023, Jey Uso became the first person to pin Roman Reigns in over 3 years when he and his brother Jimmy beat the Tribal Chief and Solo Sikoa in a tag team match. This was a hugely cathartic moment for anybody who had been following the Bloodline saga from the beginning, and it set up a mouth-watering match for SummerSlam, Reigns defending his Universal Championship against his own flesh and blood. And then, the match happened. Billed as tribal combat, Roman and Jay had what can best be described as an underwhelming affair. It was never really explained what made a tribal combat match special, apart from it being no disqualification, and the two men did very little to elevate it over any other weapons match. The rotten cherry on top of this disappointing Sunday was the ending, which saw a hooded figure cost Jay a pinfall and help Roman retain. This figure was then revealed to be Jimmy Uso, the man who had helped Jay beat Roman a month earlier. Okay then. This inexplicable swerve ruined the hot streak the Bloodline story had been on all year, and it would never really recover. Number 33, Undisputed Championship versus LA Knight, Randy Orton and AJ Styles at Royal Rumble 2024. For his first title defense of 2024 and his first of any kind in 2 months, Reigns put his Undisputed Championship on the line against 3 other wrestlers, a snake, a soccer mom, and a former modeling agent. That sounds like a great recipe for a wrestling match. LA Knight, AJ Styles, and Randy Orton all had their own reasons to go after Reigns and each other, which should have made for an exciting, intriguing multi-man bout. Instead, what we got at the Royal Rumble was just a bit bland. It wasn't a bad match, there was nothing wrong with it, there just wasn't much right with it either. It was interesting to see the 3 challengers gang up on Roman at the start, but that thread didn't last, and Solo Sikoa's predictable involvement really dragged the mood down. Reigns retained, of course, by pinning Styles, ending a flat match on a flat note. There was so much potential to this kind of arrangement, but WWE didn't seem interested in putting any of it to good use. For what ended up being the final successful title defense of Reigns' mega run, this was a notable letdown. Number 32, Universal Championship versus Braun Strowman on SmackDown. It's easy to forget as it was such a long time ago, but Braun Strowman was the man Roman Reigns pinned to start his historic reign with the Universal Championship. Crazy, right? It makes sense then that the big man was just the second person to challenge Reigns for the gold after he won the belt, a match that happened on the October 16th, 2020 edition of SmackDown. In front of the Thunderdome crowd, oh god, what a dystopian nightmare that was, the Tribal Chief battled the former Wyatt family member in what was an okay but unremarkable TV main event. It went just over 10 minutes, had a decent bit of back and forth where the 2 competitors hit their big moves on each other, and ended when Strowman passed out to Reigns' guillotine choke. The most intriguing part of this segment was the presence of Jey Uso at the top of the ramp. Roman's cousin had just lost to him in his own Universal title match and could have cost him the title here. He didn't, but he could have. That's something, right? Right? Anyway, there's a reason nobody remembers this match, but it wasn't the worst thing you'll ever see or anything like it. Number 31, Universal Championship versus Finn Balor on SmackDown. The crux of Roman Reigns versus Finn Balor on the September 3rd, 2021 episode of SmackDown was that the Irishman had never fully received his rematch after vacating the Universal Championship 5 years earlier. This, of course, was a lie. He had had several title matches since then, including one against Roman Reigns, which we will get to later. Not a great start, that. It was also based around him being cucked by John Cena, who stole Balor's original title match at SummerSlam. This isn't looking massively hopeful for Finn, is it? Anyway, the match happened and it was fine. It was fine. These two have never really had a bad match, salmon flopping notwithstanding, and this was a perfectly adequate TV main event where the result was never really in doubt. There was no interference between the bells, which is pretty rare for a Tribal Chief title match, but Reigns didn't exactly win clean. He used the old kick out whilst punching them in the knob trick to transition into the finishing sequence, which saw Balor succumb to the guillotine. This was Roman's first defense since passing the 1-year mark as champion, which is something, but otherwise this was largely forgettable fare. Number 30, Universal Championship versus Baron Corbin on Raw. Before being called back up to the main roster, Baron Corbin underwent a bit of a career renaissance down in NXT. For a very long time though, he was about as popular as a cowpat in a broken elevator. The origin for some fans' dislike for Bazza was his run as Raw's authority figure in 2018, where he served as Constable Corbin. Yeah, because that'll get him over. A waistcoat. One of Corbin's many abuses of power saw him book himself himself into a Universal title match with Roman Reigns on the September 17th edition of Raw. After a typically stagnant affair full of rest holds, and more rest holds, the match seemingly ended when Corbin blasted Reigns with a chair. However, the Lone Wolf then announced that the match would be restarted under no DQ rules, which is where the match completely turned. Out came Braun Strowman and his Dogs of War to beat on Roman, who was saved by Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. An ungodly level of interference followed as the various helpers brawled amongst each other, allowing Reigns to spear Corbin to retain. This giant schmoz was actually pretty damn fun and rescued what was otherwise a horrible match. Number 29, WWE Championship versus Sheamus on Raw. On the first episode of Raw in 2016, Roman Reigns was assigned a title defense against Sheamus, the man he had beaten to win the title towards the end of the previous year. In contrast to the reactions he had been getting, Reigns was cheered when he won the belt, thanks in part to Vince McMahon inserting himself into the story as another hurdle for the challenger to overcome. So WWE reverted back to their old mindset of more McMahons equals better, and Vince McMahon was made the special guest referee. Looking like a zebra who had eaten all the other zebras, Vince was blatantly biased in this match, routinely fast counting for Sheamus and getting constantly distracted when the Irishman was up to no good. Reigns finally looked to have the match won, but the CEO refused to slap the mat. Cue an absolute bonkers ending featuring the champion delivering a Superman punch to a 70-year-old man, Stephanie getting tangled up in the ropes, and two more referees getting involved before Roman finally scored the win. This was completely nuts, but also, again, a lot of fun, and that's not something you could necessarily say much about Roman Reigns during this era. And also something you can never say about Vince McMahon now. Number 28, Universal Championship versus Finn Balor on Raw. So this is that Universal title match I was referring to earlier. Fans aren't as stupid as you think, WWE, we remember things. The night after SummerSlam 2018, which ended with Roman beating Brock Lesnar to win his first Universal Championship, the big dog accepted a challenge from Finn Balor, who legitimately had been locked out of the title picture up to this moment. In a lovely bit of symmetry, Balor had beaten Reigns back in 2016 to earn the right to compete for the very first Universal Championship, so it was nice to see these two face off again for that very same title. As I mentioned, Roman and Finn have no trouble putting on a good match, and this was one of their better ones. It was clean for a start, with Braun Strowman only slightly getting involved toward the end, and Reigns' power versus Balor's speed was a glorious combination to watch. The champion put away his well-defined challenger to extend his reign beyond a single day and set in motion the feud with Strowman that we've already covered on this list. Number 27, Undisputed Championship versus LA Knight. Yeah, at Crown Jewel 2023. The last of just 5 title defenses Reigns made in 2023, Big Angry Joe traveled to Saudi Arabia to face off against a man whose stock had been rising all year long. LA Knight had been denied Money in the Bank earlier in the year, but had been pushed strongly regardless and had recently been given the rub by none other than Jonathan Q. Cena. Knight was now ready to take to the main event and bring home the big one by beating Reigns. Okay, so nobody actually thought this was going to happen, but still, kayfabe, brother. Knight versus Reigns was completely and utterly fine. Reigns always works best when he has someone more dynamic to face off against, and whilst LA is dynamite on the stick, his in-ring work isn't always top tier. The two fought for 20 minutes, there was highly predictable interference from Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa, and Reigns won with a spear. Honestly, there's not much more to it than that. It was a little upsetting that this was Knight's first big title match and we all knew that he was going to lose, but honestly, without some sort of stipulation attached, this was probably the best they could have done. Number 26, Universal Championship versus Brock Lesnar at Crown Jewel 2021. 2 years before his rather average match with LA Knight, Roman Reigns had another rather average title defense at Crown Jewel, this time against Brock Lesnar. The next big thing had returned at the end of SummerSlam for the first time in over a year to stare daggers through Reigns and also insinuate that Paul Heyman was cheating on him by getting back together with his ex. After the champ disposed of Finn the Herring Balor at Extreme Rules, it was on to Saudi Arabia and a big-time title match with Farmer Brock. Fans hadn't seen these two wrestle for a few years at this point in time, so there was still some novelty to watching this pair of titans crash into each other. It wasn't a brilliant match by any stretch, it went about 12 minutes and followed the same formula as all their other matches. I'm just saying it wasn't soul-crushing. The best bit was easily when a conflicted Heyman threw the title belt in the ring, getting it to land perfectly in between the two competitors. Honestly, Heyman should have tried out for the NBA after this. Number 25, Universal Championship versus Rey Mysterio on SmackDown. With Hell in a Cell 2021 coming up, WWE announced that Roman Reigns would be defending his Universal title against Rey Mysterio on the show. Then, for some weird reason, the match was bumped forward to SmackDown, but still kept as a Hell in a Cell match. To make matters worse, the USA Network got annoyed that Fox was getting the cell and they weren't, so WWE had to book Bobby Lashley versus Xavier Woods inside the structure the Monday after. What a pointless mess this whole situation was. Anyway, Roman and Rey's match did still happen, and all in all, it wasn't too bad. There was a great story behind it. Reigns had kicked the stuffing out of the Lucha legend's son Dominic Mysterio a few weeks earlier, and Rey always excels against opponents much bigger than him, which, to be fair, is pretty much everybody. Whilst it certainly suffered from not being on pay-per-view, Reigns vs Mysterio still got in plenty of fun cell moments before Reigns retained after 16 minutes. They almost definitely would have been given more time and had better spots on a bigger stage, but this was completely fine for what it was. Number 24, Universal Championship versus John Cena at SummerSlam 2021. At the end of Money in the Bank 2021, fans were shocked to hear the familiar opening bars to The Time Is Now echo around the arena. John Cena was back in WWE, fresh off the success of his latest film. Which one was it? Honestly, he does so many now that it's hard to keep track. This was, of course, to set up a blockbuster bout between the two at SummerSlam, a match steeped in history from the days WWE tried to mold Reigns into their next Cena-like star. Unfortunately, the company had already used up most of that history for their match at No Mercy 2017, but this still did feel big time. Reigns and Cena's respective wrestling styles don't really clash that well, though. They're maybe a bit too similar, too reliant on simple spots and power spots to get over, and as a result, this match underdelivered in ring. Still, the star power of the men involved, plus its position on the card, helped it feel like a decent main event. Reigns, of course, won, sending Cena back to Tinseltown, where he would make 400 new films and TV shows before the end of the year. Number 23, WWE Championship versus 29 other people at Royal Rumble 2016. After the Great McMahon punching incident of January 2016, the Authority stacked the deck even further against Reigns, hoping that the deck would become so top-heavy it would fall over and crush him. They not only forced the WWE Champion to defend his belt in the 2016 Royal Rumble, but they made him the #1 entrant, meaning he would have to do what only 2 other men had done in order to retain. This match benefits massively from the fact that it's a Rumble, which are usually one of the most fun fan experiences of the entire year. This one featured surprise appearances from Triple H, Sami Zayn, and a debuting AJ Styles, and came down to a great closing sequence between Trips and Dean Ambrose, which the game won. Reigns did spend a large portion of the match injured outside of the ring, which kinda undermined the scale of his journey to the final 3, but it's very hard to stay mad at a Royal Rumble match for too long. Well, unless it's been booked by Shane McMahon, that is. Number 22, Undisputed Championship versus Kevin Owens at Royal Rumble 2023. Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns have had 3 World Championship matches at Royal Rumble pay-per-views. This one from 2023 is the weakest of the bunch, but that's only because the other 2 were so bloody good. The Bloodline was fully in the thick of its Sami Zayn arc at this point, as the honorary Uso had just been accepted into the fold after helping them win War Games at Survivor Series. The biggest question surrounding Sami's loyalty was Kevin Owens, who was desperately trying to get his old frenemy to see the light. All this drama came to a head at the Rumble, which saw Reigns defend his undisputed title against KO in the main event. In terms of actual wrestling, this match was okay. It wasn't anything particularly special, but the truth is, it didn't need to be. The objective here wasn't to put on a great match, it was to tell a great story. And they did just that. The biggest moment of the night came after Reigns beat Owens, when Zayn finally turned on the Bloodline. I know that shouldn't count towards this match's ranking, but it played such a key part in that incredible scene that it's hard to separate the two. Forgive me. Number 21, Universal Championship versus Edge at Money in the Bank 2021. Money in the Bank 2021 was the first major WWE event with a full crowd following the lifting of COVID restrictions. To celebrate, the company booked two of their biggest stars and two masters of the spear to go one-on-one in the main event. Roman Reigns versus Edge was supposed to be the main event of WrestleMania 37 before a pesky little goat got involved, and now they were finally getting a chance to show us what they could do one-on-one. Turns out, what they could do wasn't quite as good as the Mania 37 headliner. This wasn't a bad match or anything, both are great workers and had plenty of history to draw on, it just didn't blow anyone away. Roman's new style of walk and trash talk had been highly effective with no crowds, but in a traditional wrestling environment, it wasn't as well received. Reigns retained and fans were treated to a John Cena return after the bell, but in the grand scheme of title defenses, this one is fairly middling. Literally in this case, since it's at the middle point of this very list. Number 20, Undisputed Championship versus Riddle on SmackDown. The final time Roman defended his Universal Championship on free TV before he realized how much he hated ordinary fans was the June 17th, 2022 episode of SmackDown. Yes, it was that long ago. His opponent was one Matt Riddle, or Riddle as he was known at the time, who wasn't only fighting for the top prize, but for the honor of Randy Orton, whom the Bloodline had laid out some time prior. Riddle hadn't exactly been pushed like a main eventer, so there was less chance of him winning than me winning the next season of Tough Enough. Even so though, the King of Bros put on one hell of a show. The match was a cracking SmackDown main event, full of twists and turns, with Riddle coming damn close to unseating the champ on numerous occasions. Their styles meshed surprisingly well, with Roman's cockiness almost proving his downfall. In the end, the obvious happened as the Chief retained, but for a final TV defense, this one was pretty darn good. Number 19, Undisputed Championship versus Logan Paul at Crown Jewel 2022. I think it's safe to say that nobody expected this match to rank as highly as it has. The entire story of YouTuber / maker of bad decisions Logan Paul's WWE career has been one of surprise. He surprised in his debut match at Mania 38, surprised in his first singles bout at SummerSlam 2022, and at Crown Jewel 2022 surprised everybody by taking Roman Reigns to the limit. In a match that was definitely only put on to get dem clicks, Paul challenged Reigns for the Universal Championship in just his third professional match. To give the company credit, they did a great job in providing just a smidge of doubt that Paul could win, putting over his one lucky punch finisher as a potential game changer. In reality, there was absolutely no way WWE were going to make this guy their top champion, but at various points during the match, Paul did kinda make you believe. Logan still wrestled his little blonde heart out in Saudi Arabia, showing off his raw talent in a match that was perfectly booked to show off his strengths. He didn't win the title, but he did win all of our love. Alright, that's not exactly true. Logan's still a smug little sod, but a good match is a good match, and fair play to him. Number 18, WWE Championship versus AJ Styles at Payback 2016. After winning the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 32 in a match that was really fun and nobody hated, Reigns' first challenger was AJ Styles, even though he had lost to Chris Jericho at Mania. Make it make sense. Styles and Reigns faced off in the main event of Payback, and surprise surprise, two good wrestlers had a good wrestling match. AJ was only a few months into his run with the promotion, and this was the first real chance he had been given to show off what he's all about. He grasped it with both glove-covered hands, helping elevate Reigns to one of his best matches to date. I'm not saying Roman was bad in the ring, by the way, he was just relatively untested as a single star. Please don't hurt me, Mr. Tribal Chief. Alas, and this is going to be a running theme for the next few entries, the match was marred by a poor conclusion. At first, it ended via countout, only for Shane McMahon to restart the match. Then it ended via DQ, with Stephanie McMahon then announcing it would restart with no rules. This clogged things right up, and in true WWE fashion, made everything about the McMahon family. Thankfully, they would have a much better match 1 month later, as you will soon see. Number 17, Universal Championship versus Seth Rollins at Royal Rumble 2022. For Roman's match at the 2022 Royal Rumble, WWE realized they had accidentally run out of SmackDown babyface challengers for their top dog. So they parachuted in Seth Rollins, who was a heel on Raw, and hoped nobody would notice. Spoiler, they noticed. Even with this completely arse-backwards booking, Rollins and Reigns had enough history to make this a tantalizing prospect on paper. If you need me to explain that history, then see seriously, where the hell have you been for the last 12 years? Rollins got in his old teammate's head right away, making his entrance through the crowd in a flak jacket to the Shield's old music. The two then had a psychologically interesting match as Reigns got more and more angry that he couldn't put his fellow Hound of Justice away. The challenger managed to get a rope break during a submission with a huge assist from the referee, which was the final straw. Reigns refused to let go, which caused the match to end in a DQ. Bad finish aside, this was a great match that sadly didn't really go anywhere. Number 16, Undisputed Championship versus Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 39. Speaking of matches with bad finishes, if the ending to the main event of WrestleMania 39 Night 2 had gone differently, there's every chance it could have been in the upper echelons of this countdown. Cody Rhodes was about to overcome all of his adversity, end Roman's years-long title reign, and achieve the dream of his dear departed father. And then, someone whacked him with their thumb. Solo Sikoa's interference cost Rhodes the match, and in a wave of fan anger not seen in a very long time, turned everybody against this bout, which is a shame because it had been really good up to that point. It felt properly big time, a true main event for the ages, featuring a properly hated heel and a good guy everybody actually liked. This was WWE's chance to crown a new star to lead them into the promised land, but instead they flopped harder than that rubber chicken when it hit the ring. It's worth noting that the ending to WrestleMania 40 probably made all of this worthwhile, but the feelings of utter despair caused by this result at the time simply cannot be glossed over. Number 15, Universal Championship versus Kevin Owens at Royal Rumble 2021. The middle portion of Reigns and KO's excellent Rumble trilogy went down at the 2021 event, and this time it was under last man standing rules. You really think you're gonna keep Owens down for the count, Roman? This guy gets chucked onto ladders for fun. Unfazed by sharing the ring with the modern version of Mick Foley, the champ went to war with his hairy opponent, and what a war it was! The fight spilled throughout the Thunderdome arena and beyond, even venturing backstage like it was SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. Reigns lobbed Owens off the set, Owens jumped off a forklift, Reigns ran down his foe with a golf cart. Unfortunately though, this excellent battle comes with a giant asterisk. During a spot where Roman was handcuffed to the stage, Paul Heyman was meant to free him in time for his charge to beat the count. Unfortunately, he didn't, and the referee was forced to stop counting for no reason. Owens should have been declared the winner, and Roman's mega title reign should have ended years earlier. What a shame. Number 14, Universal Championship versus Kevin Owens on SmackDown. There really is a case to be made for Kevin Owens being one of Roman's greatest career opponents. The two could have great matches anywhere, including on random episodes of SmackDown, which is exactly what they did on the Christmas Day special in 2020. Don't worry, it was pre-recorded. WWE aren't cruel enough to make their wrestlers work on Christmas Day. Actually, forget I said that. This time, the favorable pairing was set to face off inside a steel cage, the perfect stipulation as Owens had been repeatedly screwed out of matches by the Bloodline. With the playing field even, these two were free to have a great match with no distractions, with the notable exception of 4 gigantic steel walls. Owens thrives in more hardcore environments and was able to push the champ right to the edge, but as per usual, the head of the table was able to pull out the win. The match ended with Owens handcuffed to the side of the cage as Reigns slowly and cruelly walked down the steps and jumped to the floor. An overlooked gem in an overlooked rivalry. Number 13, WWE Championship versus AJ Styles at Extreme Rules 2016. Told you we'd get here. 1 month on from the Payback fiasco, Reigns and Styles were put to work once again. To prevent any McMahon-based bollocks, the match was given an Extreme Rules stipulation right out of the gate, which made sense seeing as this was the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. Although, as we saw earlier, that's never a guarantee. The Big Dog and the High Flyer, which sounds like a delightful children's book, were let loose and had great fun exploring the space of the Prudential Center. Styles even gave Reigns the phenomenal forearm off the pre-show table, which might have been the first time ever that something interesting happened involving that set. There were run-ins from the Usos and Gallows and Anderson, Roman hit AJ mid-air with a Superman punch, and Reigns kicked out of a bloody Styles clash onto a steel chair to come back and get the win. This was a fantastic hardcore brawl, and a sign that maybe this Reigns kid wasn't as bad as some of us thought. Number 12, Universal Championship Championship versus Kevin Owens at TLC 2020. The final match on this list to pit Roman against his white whale from the Great White North, the Universal Champion put his title on the line against Kevin Owens in a TLC match at the 2020 pay-per-view of the same name. I could just say this was Owens in a TLC match and you would know how wild it was, but I will continue. This battle was a spot fest for the ages, a well-plotted sequence of violent acts that reminded fans why they enjoyed watching two grown men pretend to punch each other. Owens is an absolute bumping machine, and that was on full display here as he went through tables, took big moves, and ended the match by falling backwards off a ladder after succumbing to the guillotine choke. There might have been a little bit too much Jey Uso interference for some, but it made sense within the context, and that trope hadn't been run into the ground yet. One thing that was in the ground was Owens' body. How he is able to get up and walk around after these kind of matches is beyond me, but God bless him. Number 11, Universal Championship versus Cesaro at WrestleMania Backlash 2021. Not only is this the only time Roman Reigns faced Cesaro for a world title, but this is the only one-on-one world title match Switzerland's finest ever received in WWE. You can sort of see why he left. Cesaro had been on an excellent run of form in 2021, beating Seth Rollins in a killer match at WrestleMania, so a shot at the gold was long overdue. At WrestleMania Backlash 2021, the zombie match one, Roman and Cesaro put on a gloriously technical match that showed off all of the Muscle Man's best bits. Cesaro was going into the fight with a busted arm, which created the framework for a great match-long story. Reigns exploited the injury to turn the tables on his opponent whenever he was getting the better of him. The valiant challenger ended up passing out to the guillotine, but he had proved himself nonetheless. Did he get a push off the back of this gutsy performance? Well, no, but let's move on. Number 10, WWE Championship versus Seth Rollins at Money in the Bank 2016. The best defense from Roman Reigns before his massive Universal Championship reign was the last time he got pinned to lose a world title for almost 8 years. Following the aforementioned Extreme Rules match with AJ Styles, Reigns was attacked from behind by a returning from injury Seth Rollins, that dastardly heel. Wait, he's getting cheered. Uh-oh. This led to a titanic showdown at Money in the Bank. Reigns versus Rollins, Shield member versus Shield member, the new champion versus the man who never lost the belt. This was going to be good. It was a big fight in every sense, slow and methodical to begin with, but quickly speeding up towards a grand finale. There were so many different narrative threads running through this encounter, including whether or not Seth's injured knee would hold up under the pressure, and that amplified the action and drama even further. After some fantastic wrestling, including Seth countering Roman's spear into a damn pedigree, the Architect pinned the powerhouse clean as you like to regain his precious prize. Seth had just won an outstanding match, and now he could celebrate by, oh wait, Dean Ambrose has just cashed in on him. Never mind. Number 9, Undisputed Championship versus Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam 2022. I've not been entirely complimentary to Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar's elongated feud so far on this list, but you will hear nothing but good things from me about this absolutely bonkers spectacle. Fans were less than thrilled to find out that Reigns would be defending the Undisputed Universal Championship against Lesnar again at SummerSlam 2022. However, public opinion quickly shifted when the Beast rode into the stadium on a goddamn tractor. Old Brock Donald began this last man standing match by jumping off the scoop of the vehicle, which might just be the greatest start to a wrestling match in history. This set the tempo for what was to follow, an insane display that by the end looked more like the climax to a superhero movie than a sporting contest. These two went to the extreme to put each other away, including the iconic moment where Lesnar used his tractor to lift the damn ring up off the arena floor, and that wasn't even the finish. The match actually ended when Reigns and the Usos literally buried Lesnar under a pile of rubble, finally keeping him down for the count. This was like Godzilla versus King Kong in real life. Big and stupid, but really, really fun. Number 8, Universal Championship versus Daniel Bryan at Fastlane 2021. After the frankly pitiful match they had at Elimination Chamber, Daniel Bryan demanded a proper shot at Reigns and the Universal Championship at Fastlane 2021. It might have been a singles match on paper, but there was actually a third force at play here. Edge, who had won the Royal Rumble, was mad that D-Bry had gotten a chance to face Reigns before him. To satiate the angry Canuck, Edge was made the special guest enforcer for the Fastlane lane match, which led to some very spicy interactions. Bryan accidentally took Edge out with a chair toward the end of the bout, resulting in the Rated R superstar laying out both participants later on. This allowed Reigns to retain the gold and set up a very interesting dynamic going into WrestleMania 37. Oh, and of course, the wrestling itself was exquisite. Bryan actually got a chance to mix it up with Reigns, and surprise, surprise, the two worked really well together, but you knew that already. Number 7, Undisputed Championship versus Drew McIntyre at Clash at the Castle 2022. Clash at the Castle 2022, Cardiff, Wales. Roman Reigns was putting the Undisputed title on the line against hometown hero Drew McIntyre, who was from the part of Wales also known as Scotland. Drew might not have hailed from the valleys, but the UK crowd was still fully behind him, and this rabid audience pushed this great match to epic levels. McIntyre was the perfect foil for Reigns, just as big and strong, but fighting on the side of righteousness and honor. The match was expertly structured, with enough big spots peppered throughout to create a satisfying narrative flow, with nobody entirely sure which way the result was going to go. Of course, we can't talk about this match without mentioning the man in the hood. Just when it looked like the big Scotsman had the champ banged to rights, a mysterious figure pulled the referee under the bottom rope. This was NXT's Solo Sikoa, making his main roster debut, who aligned himself with the bloodline and allowed his cousin to retain under the slipperiest of circumstances. What a ruddy roller coaster ride this was. The only thing that could top it would be an improvised sing-along. Number 6, Universal Championship versus Daniel Bryan on SmackDown. For the best title defense Roman Reigns has ever had on TV, and one of his best ever period, we turn to the April 30th, 2021 episode of Friday Night SmackDown. Having been beaten by the Universal Champion so many times before under so many different dodgy circumstances, Daniel Bryan decided to place the ultimate wager. One last shot at the title versus his career on SmackDown. Fueled by the knowledge they would take away his parking space if he lost, the American Dragon turned everything up to 11. He threw all of his energy into this match, selling it with the desperation of a man literally fighting for his livelihood as Reigns did his best to swat this annoying little fly away. A brilliant mix of technical prowess, brute strength, and psychology that would make Sigmund Freud weep with joy. Reigns versus Bryan ended with the Tribal Chief making his challenger pass out in the guillotine in what would prove to be the GOAT's final match in WWE. Well, for now at least. Bryan could probably return there at the age of 67 and still be able to run rings around everyone. Number 5, Universal Championship versus Edge versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 37. 19 days before Reigns and Bryan went one-on-one on SmackDown, they had fought in the main event of WrestleMania 37 Night 2, only this time they let Edge play too. What was supposed to be a singles match between champion Reigns and Royal Rumble winner Edge got hijacked when Bryan once again forced him into a Mania triple threat. And you know what? Thank God he did, because having an extra cog in this machine made everything run so much more smoothly. Everybody in this match had beef with everyone else, and at the time it was plausible that anyone could win. The idea of Reigns losing the belt only a few months in is laughable now, but hey, at the time, Edge and Bryan went from working together to tearing each other apart at the drop of a hat, all whilst Reigns lurked in the background like a big, menacing, oddly handsome shark. Sexy Jaws got the win and then some when he stacked both men on top of each other for a double pin. Reigns looked like an absolute boss coming out of this match, having just won one of the best WrestleMania main event matches in some time. It was hard not to believe that after, that. Number 4, Universal Championship versus Jey Uso at Hell in a Cell 2020. Roman's first major feud as the sadistic heel Universal Champion wasn't with an established main eventer or a legend, it was with a guy who had primarily been a tag team wrestler. Jey Uso stepped up to challenge his cousin at 2 consecutive pay-per-views, the second one being Hell in a Cell. But this wasn't just an ordinary Hell in a Cell match, if there is such a thing, this was an I Quit Hell in a Cell match. So why did they need the cell? Well, because they'd already made the posters and it was too late to ask for a refund. Pretty sure that's the legit answer anyway. This encounter had all the melodrama you could want from 2 family members fighting, as Reigns grew increasingly angrier with Jey for refusing to give in. It took a tearful Roman choking out Jey's brother Jimmy to bring the insubordinate twin into line, one of the best match endings of the entire year. The only thing holding this match back was that it didn't utilize the stipulation to its fullest, but that is a very minor nitpick in an otherwise excellent outing for the two Anoa'i family members. Number 3, Undisputed Championship versus Sami Zayn at Elimination Chamber 2023. Who doesn't love a hometown hero? Wrestling fans most certainly embrace those that were born and raised in their country, city, or province. And this was definitely the case when proud Canadian Sami Zayn returned to Montreal to take on Roman Reigns at the 2023 Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. It helped that Sami had recently turned babyface, rejecting the bloodline and escaping the tribal chief's clutches to set up a title match that was a long time coming. With a rabid crowd behind his back, the underdog from the underground threw absolutely everything he had at the dominant champion, even though there was pretty much zero chance of him winning. I mean, Reigns was booked to tangle with Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, so it was 99% sure that he wouldn't drop the title at Chamber. However, sometimes in life, 1% is all you need. Sami's nearfalls got some of the loudest reactions of the entire year as fans clutched at their faces in longing. Of course, Reigns did pick up the win with a spear, but this match made everyone believe that the impossible could have happened. And hey, isn't that what wrestling's all about? Number 2, Universal Championship versus Jey Uso at Clash of Champions 2020. We now go all the way back to the very start of Roman's gigantic run as Universal Champ. After his shocking return at SummerSlam and then winning the title 1 week later at Payback, Reigns made his first pay-per-view title defense under his new gimmick at Clash of Champions. His opponent? A man who had never had a world title match before, his own cousin, Jey Uso. What transpired was less of a wrestling match and more of a Shakespearean drama. In between the moves, Roman constantly berated Jey, demanding he accept his position as the new family leader and show him some respect. Jey, though, would not give in, which just led to more punishment from an angry head of the table. Reigns would get the win, but Jey still refused to acknowledge him, kicking off the entire chain of events that led this story to where it is today. Roman Reigns has had many great World Championship matches in his life, but to produce one of the most emotional and unique wrestling matches ever, he had to keep it in the family. Number 1, Undisputed Championship versus Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 40. 1 year on from his failed attempt at WrestleMania 39 and 1 night removed from losing the big tag match on night 1, Cody Rhodes stepped into the main event of WrestleMania night 2 to face Roman Reigns once again for the Undisputed Universal Championship. And he only went and bloody lost. Just kidding. Can you even imagine? With the deck firmly stacked against him, Cody overcame everything, including interference from every single member of the bloodline, to finally pin Reigns for the championship and finish the bloody story. He had a little bit of help from the likes of Jey Uso, John Cena, and some bloke named Mark who couldn't be bothered to get into costume, but this was the American Nightmare's moment. Finally, the one title that had eluded his family for decades was in his grasp, and the fans in Philly couldn't have been happier. Well, the ones that hadn't already frozen to death anyway. It was a glorious end to Cody's story, Roman's reign, and WrestleMania 40 itself that made the previous year's Mania match, and a lot of the dross that came after it, feel worth it. Put simply, it truly is one of the greatest Mania main events ever. No rubber chicken this time either. See ya!